All right, good afternoon, everyone. I see our participant list is slowly growing. So I want to welcome all of you to ECE Webinar 4. This webinar is known as Putting the Pieces Together. As usual, your microphone is muted, but please feel free to add your questions and comments into the chat. We do have the chat feature operating today, not the Q&A feature, so please feel free to use the chat. You don't need to list your name or affiliation in the chat because you provided that information when you registered for the webinar. If you look at the agenda, which is on the screen now for today's session, you will see that this webinar has been purposefully designed to respond to and clarify your information requests and the questions that you had from webinars 1, 2, and 3. So today we're going to be going through the context for change. Why are we doing this? Who's doing what? When is it happening? Who's responsible for which of the parts of the ECE preparation and licensing system that you interact with? How do all of these pieces work together? And then we're going to give you some further information about the pilots and encourage you to sign up for the pilots. You will notice on the bottom of your screen that we have 4 presenters today. I'm Phyllis Jacobson. I'm an administrator in the Professional Services Division, and I am concentrating most of my time now on supporting the early childhood work and in specific the activities for the preschool development grant renewal that we have. And following me is Mary Sandy. Mary, would you like to introduce yourself? Just say a word or two.
Absolutely. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Bixie Sandy. I'm the Executive Director here at the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. I'm thrilled to be with you today.
And next we have Terry Clark.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here with you today. I'm the Director of the Professional Services Division, which is where 3 of the 4 pilots in this process are living.
Thank you, Terry. And now Amy.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back with you. It was exciting to meet all of you and start working with you last webinar, and I'm happy to be back with you today. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Amy. So as we see today, in the next slide, is the 4th of 5 planned ECE webinars. The next webinar will focus on the program quality peer review process, and we'll talk about that at the end of this presentation. But for today, we're focusing on putting all of the pieces we've talked to you about in the first 3 webinars together and helping you make sense of that. So our first topic, welcome and introduction. See, we're already ahead of the game. We've done that. The next speaker, following this introductory part of the webinar, is going to be about the big picture, setting the context for change. Where have we been? Where are we going? And why are we going there? And as part of that, who's responsible for what pieces and parts of the ECE preparation, licensing, and professional development processes? It turns out that actually number 3 is going to come before number 2 today. How do all of these pieces fit together? What is changing, when and why? I know you're keenly interested in that information. And then the review of the ECE pilots. So if we move into topic 3 before topic 2, this is the question of who's who in ECE workforce preparation. So there are 3 key workforce preparation agencies involved in this work: the Commission, the California Department of Education, and the California Department of Health and Human Services. Each of these agencies has a different but complementary role to play. The Commission has authority over pre-service preparation, and by that we mean prior to earning the child development permit or when moving up a permit level. The Commission also has authority over the preparation requirements for what it takes to get the child development permit, and it also has authority over the quality of the ECE preparation programs that are provided to candidates for the permit. The Department of Education has authority over in-service professional development for those who already hold permits and who are working in the field. The Department of Education also has authority over the requirements and the quality of the ECE programs and settings that are serving young children. And the Department of Education also has funded and has authority over the Child Development Training Consortium, the CDTC, and the mentor program. I know there was some confusion in some of the chat questions over the last webinars about the mentor program. This is actually a program that is run by and overseen by the Department of Education at the present time. And then we move to the Department of Health and Human Services on the next slide. And the Department of Health and Human Services is presently in the process of transitioning quite a number of services that may previously have been provided by the Department of Education other than the Title V preschool programs. The Department of Health and Human Services also has authority over the Preschool Development Grant Renewal that is funding the work that we're doing with you. And it has authority over CalWORKs and other similar programs and services. Their role is still evolving, and so we didn't want to be too specific in this particular slide. And with that, I turn this presentation over to our Executive Director, Dr. Mary Bixie Sandy, who is going to set the big picture for you.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. And again, hello and welcome, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you on so many levels. I began working with the Commission in 1992, and one of the first areas of work for me was a review of the then child development, or the Children's Center permit. And there were a number of issues around whether we were getting enough people on that permit to provide a supply to work in our early care and learning centers. And many of the same tensions and issues that we've grappled with, for time immemorial around how to prepare and license this workforce. So that's going on some years ago now. And at the time that I was here in 1992 and 93, we constructed this child development permit. And it is, constructed and services basically state subsidized child care development centers. People who work in those centers that are subsidized by state funding are required to hold this permit. But we live, as you all know, I'm sure, in a bit of the Wild West around early childhood education. And there have been many reports and retrospectives at the national and the state and the local level about how to really focus on improving how we prepare the workforce and really focus on quality within center-based care and all types of care for some time. We find ourselves in a moment right now where I think we are about to make a leap forward, and that's very exciting. I will say that the child development permit has served us since 1993 in its current structure and has brought some positive things to this work. First of all, it's shown remarkable durability. We haven't done anything with it since 1993. It was structured to provide a career ladder, if you will, that recognized multiple on-ramps and entry points into work in center-based care, and recognized a number of roles within providing service in these kinds of centers. It's recognized the assistant level. It recognizes an associate teacher level, where someone can serve as an entry-level lead teacher while they continue to make progress toward the full journey level lead teacher level of the permit. There are opportunities to move into coaching and mentoring through the master teacher level. There's the permit for the site supervisor and a permit for the program director. And the way this is structured enables, or was the theory of action was people could enter and move up or locate at a particular level where their work was valuable, and they persisted there. We've had a great array of preparation pathways to get there, and not a whole lot of organization around that heretofore. Most of this preparation occurs in the community college system, although we have seen, and there are articulation agreements between our 2- and 4-year institutions that enable professional or people who would like to earn a higher level degree to move up and move forward. But what distinguishes this particular permit from what we do with every other credential we issue is this idea of a learning to teach continuum. And you're going to, the other speakers this morning are going to talk some more about what that is and how that really applies to what we're looking at in terms of what's coming next. And here's a spoiler alert. We really would like to bring preparation for the child development permit into the broader concept of learning to teach and bring it to some parallelism within the larger system of the education workforce. Next slide, please. So in preparation, unlike what we do in every other credential area, we have relied on the completion of specific course units that are additive. 6 units required to enter as an assistant, 12 units for an associate teacher, 24 units of early childhood coursework with some general ed tacked on for the teacher level. So that's the career ladder part of it. Add more units, move up the permit, but with almost no definition from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. And we are a standards board. Our task in the world is to set standards for the preparation and licensing of the workforce. We have not done so with the early childhood workforce to date. We've relied heavily on the completion of units of coursework as a proxy for understanding that we have quality in this system. We have seen published in multiple venues, the Department of Education, with support from, I think, the Hewlett Foundation, possibly the Packard Foundation, developed extensive materials on competencies. What does it take to be competent to work in this field? That is a valuable resource that really unpacks what the knowledge base and skill base for preparation to work in this field ought to look like. On the national level, we've seen reports on what are the essential components of that. But the Commission has taken all of this into consideration, but have only recently begun to develop out of that source material our own kind of definition, if you will, of what does it mean to be prepared to work with young children. We have not had to date any kind of metric or oversight system of that preparation, but again, spoiler alert, we're on the verge here of moving forward into a different kind of relationship with the entities that prepare this workforce. And there's some exciting opportunities coming as a result of that. Next slide, please. So in the last 5 years, we've really accelerated our work. We put together a child development permit advisory committee and asked them to take a look at this system and make some broad recommendations for us, which they did. They produced a report that we took to our commission that maintained a career ladder idea and concept within the permit, identified 4 key aspects of work: the assistant level of work, the teaching level of work, the mentoring or coaching level of work, and the leadership or administration level of work as critical components of whatever we would do to permit or credential this in this field in the future. We would need to recognize that these levels of work and were going to be necessary to maintain and to develop some standards around, which is essentially what we did. We have not yet made changes in the structure of the permit because we've been awaiting the results and the findings and recommendations of the master plan that is pending. That should be out, I'm hopeful, this year, that will give us a broad vision and horizon for early childhood care and development writ large across all sectors, bringing some order, if you will, to the Wild West in which we work. And our task is going to be to find our place in that vision and to move forward with the changes necessary to really bring some focus into what we do to prepare this workforce. So that's a very exciting moment. But in anticipation of that, we drew from all of these different state, local, social, and national resources to build a set of performance expectations that constitute what the Commission believes is the essential knowledge, skill, and ability base that individuals will need to work as assistants, teachers, mentors, leaders in the system in the future. As we move forward, we will have opportunity to apply that to an updated credentialing permit or child development permit. We've also put together a set of program guidelines to, again, bring some set of expectations to the entities that, that are preparing the workforce about what constitutes high quality in that system. And so that's the moment we find ourselves in right now. Anticipating a visionary document that will come out and set the stage for all of us to continue our work. We've received some grants or a grant and are hoping for a second grant to really help us build some tools that will help to strengthen what we do in this sector. You're going to hear some more about that from some of our other speakers, but it is a very exciting moment to be in for so many reasons. But in terms of the early childhood set of reasons, I think we're about to make some significant strides forward in supporting the development of this workforce who provides such a critical support to our youngest learners as they get ready for schooling and the rest of their lives. So that's the big picture as I see it at the moment, and I'm going to pass it back to Phyllis, and thank you.
I actually think this comes to me now. So what are the takeaways from what we just heard? What do we know? So the master plan for early learning and care should be out in the next month or so. It's going to provide the vision for the next decade, and it is informing this work. The infrastructure for change has been built over the past 5 years. We've been working to establish a competency-based preparation and licensure system for the workforce. We have a goal that I think we all share for high quality, organized and focused preparation programs that enable candidates to learn, to practice, and to be assessed on the manageable number of job-related competencies. This substantiates their readiness to begin professional practice and to move forward through the ladder of the child development permit. Continuing with takeaways, this new infrastructure includes the teaching performance expectations. They define the job-related competencies for the 4 roles: assisting, teaching, mentoring, coaching, and leading or administrating jobs in the related to the child development permit. There are also program guidelines. These program guidelines define the quality elements that preparation provided to the ECE workforce needs to have for earning a child development permit. This is a change because previously it has been just a collection of courses at regionally accredited institutions. These guidelines will be used to help programs think about infrastructure, capacity, and to ensure that all candidates are learning, practicing, and being assessed on the TPEs. The third part of this is what we heard about in the last webinar, and there'll be more information about this ECE teaching performance assessment that will provide all the candidates an opportunity to demonstrate within their coursework and fieldwork that they can apply their learning and that they're ready to begin professional practice. And then the fourth big component is the peer quality, the program quality peer review piece, which will be our 5th webinar. This is going to look at how do we assure that the quality of this preparation meets the commission's standards. So we're piloting this new infrastructure, and it will take place starting now, this past September, through the 2022 year. The pilot activities are being supported by this federal preschool development grant, the Renewal that California has. And these piloting experiences are going to help California, all the preparation programs, move towards an ECE preparation program that is based in California's Learning to Teach system. And I believe I turn it back over to Phyllis now.
Yes, and thank you very much, Terry and Mary, for that very informative context-setting piece. So let's go back to reviewing for ourselves what the components of the Learning to Teach Continuum are. This is a system we've been looking at over the past 3 webinars. So this is the system that describes California's system for how educators should be prepared. And it has 6 key interactive and interdependent elements. And we're going to project for you next the graphic that should be familiar to those of you who have attended any of the prior webinars. This is the graphic that embodies the Learning to Teach system. Each of the components of the system are arrayed around the central purpose, which is learning to teach. In our different webinars, we've highlighted several of the different pieces to show what we're focusing on, but in this webinar, we're putting all of these pieces together. So only the center is green and all of the blue elements around it are under consideration for today. So moving on to what is changing, when it's changing, and why it's changing. As you've heard Mary and Terry both say, we are currently moving towards an ECE workforce learning to teach preparation system, which is similar to how all other California educators are prepared and licensed. And let me just digress for a moment here, because I've seen a comment in the chat that is concerned that by moving to this type of a system, we may be developing into what some people are calling a mini kindergarten or a mini K-12. Please keep in mind that the teaching performance expectations that are a key part of this system have been designed specifically for young children, for persons who want to work with, educate, help young children grow and develop as they move both through the early childhood system and then enter into the K-12 system. This whole system in early childhood is focused on young learners, not on K-12. The movement towards this learning to teach system is being supported by funding from the Preschool Renewal Grant, the PDGR as we refer to it. And we are expecting that this direction is likely going to be consistent with the direction that will be provided by the Governor's Master Plan Committee. And as you heard Terry say, the time frame for piloting, for development and piloting is now. We welcome you to sign up, and we're going to be talking about that in just a little bit about how to sign up. All of the key system elements that we've been talking about have been or are in the process of being developed. And the first two elements, the TPEs and program guidelines, are ready to be piloted. So on the next slide, this is what's going to characterize our learning to teach system that we're piloting. There are clearly identified and a manageable number of candidate competencies, otherwise known as the TPEs, for each permit level related to the job role authorized by the permit. For the pilot, we will be focusing on the teacher level and the teacher TPEs. We are hopeful of developing organized quality preparation programs for permit candidates, and these programs will provide ongoing, consistent support for candidates so that they can learn, practice, and be assessed on the candidate competencies as specified in the program guidelines. We emphasize here also that this assessment system that we are working on for the performance assessment is designed at the moment to be a formative system to help inform candidates and programs about candidate progress. I've seen some comments in the chat that folks are concerned that this is going to be a summative assessment that you must pass right away or that there will be some consequence, and that is not the case. At this moment, we are just developing the system. We're going to be trying it out. There are no negative consequences for programs or candidates. This is going to be done formatively at our beginning process here. There will also be a program quality review process to substantiate the quality of the preparation being provided to permit candidates. We have not even begun to conceptualize that process yet. That's going to be the topic of webinar number 5 coming up in 2 weeks. There will be data-informed practices because as part of providing a high-quality preparation program, we expect and we know that you are already using data to help inform your practices to support the preparation you're providing for candidates and to support feedback, focused, targeted, helpful feedback to candidates. And then we do intend to continue incorporating multiple ways for people who are working with young children to enter the system and to move up the career ladder. And now Terry is going to, Terry is going to talk to you about what's not changing.
let's just to be really clear, what is not changing at this point in time. At this point, the child development permit structure, the 6 levels of the permit, and the unit requirements are not changing at this point in time. Programs in the pilot will continue to implement your own coursework. It's just you're going to be showing how your coursework is aligned to the TPEs during the pilot. And if you're using the CAP coursework, that is a very easy process because the CAP courses are already aligned with the TPEs. The ECE preparation programs will continue to use your own program-embedded candidate assessments, what you've been doing. Programs that participate in Pilot 3 will have the opportunity to try out the ECE Teaching Performance Assessment. This does not have to affect candidates' grades, though. Programs will not receive individual candidate scores during the pilot of the ECE TPA. It is something that, as a community, we will come together and learn about and then make improvements in the TPA so that it's ready to be used. So none of these things are changing at this point in time. What might change in the future? And these are mights. There are no firm dates of when this will change, but these are things that are on the horizon, and there is a hope that these things are changed. So the Commission's oversight of ECE preparation program quality. The reality of the world, there is no ECE Commission oversight right now of ECE preparation program quality. It is based on a candidate accumulating the required number of units across the identified topics. If this changes, it would be more like some of the other educator preparation programs where instead getting the license would be based on completing a commission-approved program. Teacher preparation programs, and I know early childhood is different from teacher education in the K-12 world, but some programs are somewhere around 30 units, some are 60 units, some are 40 units. The units are there, how they have organized and put together the coursework that meets the program guidelines and the teaching performance expectations. So it is possible that in the future, the child development permit might not be based on a number of units. In the future, the TPEs and the program guidelines might become required for all early childhood education preparation programs, which is one of the reasons we're encouraging everyone to participate in the pilot, because you get to try it out, in essence, for free at no risk to yourselves. You get to understand, what does it mean to have program guidelines? What does it mean to talk about the design of the program? These are things you've undoubtedly done at your local institution. It's just, it hasn't been done with the Commission. For all the other licensure programs that the Commission monitors, programs are required to explain their mission and vision, their design, how their coursework integrates with their fieldwork, what the purposes of that are, what the qualities of the supervisors are. These are things having to do with program guidelines. What might change in the future is there might be a required formative use of the early childhood education TPA by all ECE preparation programs. This is not looking at it as an external assessment. This is looking at it as a program embedded in coursework and in field experience, formative during the program. Also, all ECE preparation programs implementing their preparation would be consistent with the components of the Learning to Teach continuum that Phyllis has been talking about and sharing across these webinars. And in the future, after the master plan report is out, after additional conversations take place with the community, an updated child development permit structure with requirements might be put in place. This is not happening this year. It's not happening this month. That type of change is going to take some time. Once there's an agreement on how the change should be made, there would need to be regulations put in place, and there would be a transition time frame. So these are all things that might change in the future, but are not changing at this point in time.
Thank you, Terry. And so this brings us back to what is going to be supporting the work for these pilots, and that is the Preschool Development Grant Renewal. There are presently 3 pilots that are in play, and the 4th pilot we'll be talking about in 2 weeks. The first pilot is piloting the ECE Teaching Performance Expectations. The second pilot, which goes along with pilot 1, is piloting the implementation of the ECE program guidelines. And pilot 3 is participating in the piloting of the ECE Teaching Performance Assessment. Now, we're going to give you a rationale for why you want to do this, and then we're going to unpack each of these pilots, because I've seen a number of questions in the chat about the pilots. So the next slide reviews, and we've seen this slide before. It reviews why should you participate in the pilots. Well, as Terry said, this is a no risk way for you to dip your toe into the waters and to try out the Learning to Teach Continuum. So we have an opportunity for you to organize around a common manageable set of statewide competency expectations for the ECE workforce. These are the TPE, or Teaching Performance Expectations. We have an opportunity for you to try out, with no risk, the Teaching Performance Assessment. You would get a first look at this and be able to have your candidates benefit from that experience, and yourselves as well when you get aggregate data. You also have the brand new perk here of being able to directly recommend candidates for the Child Development Permit. Those applications are likely to come in without errors, as sometimes happens when candidates have to develop and submit these on their own, and they do get faster processing. And then you will have the opportunity to try out a new peer program quality review process when this process becomes developed and is available. So there's a lot of good reasons for you to try these out. So let's talk about the specifics of pilots 1 and 2. Who is eligible to participate in pilots 1 and 2? Any 2 and 4 or 4-year regionally accredited institution of higher education, and that includes the community colleges, the CSUs, the UCs, and the private and independent colleges and universities that offer preparation for the Child Development Teacher Level Permit are eligible to volunteer for, notice we say volunteer, and participate in the TPE and program guidelines pilots. All we ask is that you meet any one or more of these criteria. Either your program is using or is about to use or is in process of transitioning to use the updated TPE-aligned CAP curriculum, or you are using or developing or moving towards developing and using your own TPE-aligned curriculum, or your institution or program is accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children. Some of you may meet only one of these criteria. Some of you may meet more than one. All you need is one, and you are eligible to participate in the pilot. Some folks have asked if there's any penalty for not participating. Will there be a disadvantage for your candidates? Will there be a disadvantage for your program? Will your candidates not be allowed to earn the permit anymore? No, there is no harm. There is no risk to your candidates if you choose, for whatever reason, to not participate in the pilots. We hope that you will make the decision to join in the pilot. We think this provides you with an incredible opportunity to see and experience the future. And so we're encouraging you strongly to think about this. If your curriculum is already the CAP curriculum and that has been aligned for you already by CAP, then there is no work additional that you would need to do to revise your curriculum. If you are already in the process of updating your curriculum, then that work will continue. If you're not interested in trying out this type of curriculum, you may still continue to operate the program that you have been operating. So what is being piloted in pilot 2? That's the piece where you're getting to try out implementing the program guidelines, as Terry explained to you. And this is an opportunity for you to think about and organize and show to yourselves as well as to the commission How do your programs align with the areas of quality and organization and support that we know are hallmarks of high quality preparation? And how does your program support and prepare candidates to learn, practice, and be assessed on the TPEs or the competencies that are being or will be expected of them to do their job roles? All programs that are interested in piloting must participate in 1 and 2. It's very difficult to separate out the preparation from the quality of the preparation provided to candidates from the content of their curriculum. So we strongly urge you to participate in pilots 1 and 2 together. Participation in pilots 3 and 4 is optional but highly encouraged. And in fact, pilot 3 will be open, the TPA pilot, and Amy will talk to you about this in a minute. Pilot 3 is open to all institutions that offer preparation for the child development permit, whether or not you are participating in pilots 1 and 2. The time frame for pilots 1 and 2 is now. We're ready, willing, and eager to receive your enrollment, and you can enroll by filling out the online enrollment survey, and the link to that is being provided in a later slide. What is the cost for participation? 0. There is no cost and no fees for programs or candidates in the pilots. Next slide, please. So, what are your obligations if you choose to participate in these pilots? Well, as we've indicated, you really need to do pilots 1 and 2 together because they are intended to work together. The deadline for signing up, I saw this question just now. We would like you to sign up as soon as possible. There is not a hard and fast deadline. Some programs are ready sooner, some programs are ready later, but we encourage you to sign up as soon as possible. If you sign up for these 2 pilots, this is what we will expect of you. First, that you apply to participate. That's an electronic survey. There's a link to that. And there is an Appendix D in the pilot guideline document that's available on the ECE webpage. We will ask you to submit an ECE course list. That is a simple list of your courses. If you're CAP aligned, you simply need to indicate that. We will ask you to submit a matrix showing which courses address the TPEs. Again, if you're CAP aligned, that work has been done for you. If you are using your own curriculum and aligning it, then you would need to fill this out. We ask you to submit an alignment checklist, which is a simple checklist, just check-offs, which is Appendix C in the guidelines document on the website. And then once a year, we will ask you to submit candidate enrollment data. How many candidates are participating in your program? And with that, we move to Pilot 3, which is all about the ECE Teaching Performance Assessment, and we turn this over to Amy Rising.
Thank you, Phyllis. Okay, so we have a couple of key things to go over with you today that were introduced in the last webinar, but we wanted to come back to them and make sure that if you had questions, we could address them for you. So we're going to start by reminding you that the performance assessment, of course, is based on the TPE that Phyllis has shared with all of you, and that you are going to be aligning and building programs to, so that candidates have the opportunities to learn the TPE, practice the TPE, and then be assessed on the TPE. As you've heard earlier in this webinar, there are no consequences and there are no fees to participate in trying out the formative performance assessments that we will be developing with a design team. And that brings me to the third bullet. So we very much build our performance assessments in California by bringing together experts in the area of the credential or permit that we're working to understand, so that we can provide that opportunity to candidates to demonstrate and get that formative feedback about their practice as they come through their programs and head towards their permits. So we will be pulling together a design team. We hope to get that application out in the month of November and be receiving those applications for design team membership and then hopefully beginning the design team work that will start in early 2021. The design team would be made up of practitioners, educators, those who are in the institutions of higher ed, community colleges, county offices, independent programs who are in fact providing that instruction to all candidates. So just want to make sure that if you are interested in this work, that you do know you have that opportunity to apply to be on the design team. We typically have about 20 or so experts with us on that design team, and we meet fairly regularly over 2 years of time. So that moves us to our next slide. Who's eligible to be in this pilot? Well, all 2nd and 4-year regionally accredited institutions of higher education offering preparation programs can be involved. And maybe whoever's got the slides, you'd go back one for me. That'd be helpful. And then what is being piloted in this study? Well, the tasks themselves, the performance experiences that we ask the teacher candidate to engage in. So we call those tasks, the things that teachers know and are able to demonstrate. We also use the term activities for when we're particularly working with our younger students and children and toddlers. What activities are we asking for students to have that opportunity to engage in? And then how is that teacher interacting with those students and those children? And of course, there are scoring rubrics that we produce under that expertise guidance from our design team, and that we test very carefully in our pilot study work to make sure that we are capturing language that really does reflect the performance of these early childhood educators that is authentic to the work of an early childhood educator. So there will be instructional cycles, we typically call them, and then a set of rubrics that will help all of us understand about those knowledge, skills, and abilities that our early childhood educators need to demonstrate. And what comes along with all of this too is a whole set of support materials that we will provide to those of you who are working with these new educators coming in to work with early childhood. So just rest assured that if you do agree to be in the pilot here, you will be getting lots of support from Commission and our technical contractor and the expertise that comes from our design team to help you through this process. So next slide, please. So what is the time frame? You're all asking questions in the chat about the time frame. So the ECE Teaching Performance Assessment will be developed during the 2020-21 academic year. And we're looking to pilot then that work that we develop, that we get up on our drawing board and get drafted during the 21-22 year. And then we will learn a lot from that. So we want as many of you to be involved in this pilot as are willing to be involved. We will take all of you with us if you would like to have this opportunity to try out these instructional cycles and rubrics and the materials that come along with it. Now, we will be looking at a target number of submissions so that together, again, we'll be pulling together assessors that would help us take a look at this. Again, experts in the field of early childhood only. And we will look at these submissions by candidates, the evidence they put together, and then score that based on those rubrics. And that data, while it won't come back in the pilot at the individual level, it will come back in an aggregated way, so that as we look at, let's say 100 candidates might participate with us or more, we can take a look at how those candidates are doing in regard to those analytic rubrics that describe performance of practice. And again, remember, there is no cost to programs or candidates to engage in this work with us in this study. Instead, we will be providing technical assistance to you and support, webinars and outreach, all of which will come to you at no cost. Next slide, please. So time commitment, or actually obligations. So again, we do need to know who you are, so we will ask you to submit an application. And our contractor for this work is going to be Evaluation Systems. They've been working with us for the last 6 years now to develop performance assessments in California for general education and special education and our administrators. So lots of expertise from them that we will take advantage of. And anyway, they need to work and understand. So there will be a survey at that point. We'll let you know about that. But in the meantime, you can sign up on Phyllis's application sign up spot, and she told you a little bit about that. But if you're confused and you want to be with us, just reach out and we'll help you get signed up. All right, so then we want you then, as you're in the pilot, if you decide to participate, to support your candidates. These are embedded performance assessments. So they're in courses and in any kind of practice where a candidate is demonstrating that interaction with actual children. And these are part of that practice. So they're authentic in that way. So this is not go off by yourself somewhere and take a test kind of experience. This is very much a supported experience for candidates where they're doing the real work of early childhood educators, and they get to have their work reviewed. They get feedback before they would ever submit it for any kind of final assessment. And again, remember, this is so important to remember, these performance assessments are going to be formative in nature. They'll be done at the local level and scored at the local level. So that we can really build that competency on the part of our early educators. And then finally, feedback, of course, in the pilot study itself would come to the commission as well as to our contractor to understand then how we iterate. So when we're building performance assessments in California, we work closely with the field and stakeholders and the experts. And with every trial that we go through the pilot study, then through the field test, and then into operation, we continue to gather information from the candidates themselves and from instructors, from assessors, and we continue to revise as we go. So these are complex things to develop, but we're doing it together as a learning community, and we'll all learn together as we go through this formative experience. Next slide. All right, so I jumped ahead a little before, but back to time commitment. So we will provide lots of support to you and your faculty. Sometimes it will be optional. Sometimes we will ask you to please try to attend or send someone to attend so that your program has access to that information. So we will certainly start with an initial webinar that'll probably be about 2 hours in time on Zoom to help anyone who wants to be in the pilot learn about the materials and understand what needs to be in place in programs to support those candidates for early childhood education. We will help you become familiar with the ECE performance assessments and rubrics. We will offer weekly office hours, which means that is a set aside hour just for you in early childhood that you can call us at that time with any questions you have, and that will be on the spot, week by week support. And then, of course, we would ask you to provide that support to your candidates as they engage in these instructional cycles and think about those rubrics. This could include reading their submissions, watching the videos that they create of teaching practice, providing coaching, and really helping that development of teaching practice. And then, of course, if you are really interested in this work and you find that it is really your cup of tea, we would like you to think about coming alongside and helping us assess the work in the pilot test and potentially in the field test. And then eventually, as we move towards statewide implementation here, that locally you might then become an assessor in your local regional area, as these will be implemented locally and assessed locally. For the pilot, though, we would need you to commit to a couple of days, and we, of course, would pay you for that time, just like we would pay you for the training and then any additional scoring that you might do during the pilot. So there is some compensation there for you if you want to come along and be an assessor. Again, just want to remind you as we go to the next slide that assessors will only be folks that hold early childhood permits themselves and or are in faculty positions, whether they're at the community college, the institution of higher ed, the county office of education. Together, you would have to meet those qualifications to be an assessor. So it's a very important part of making sure that our assessments are valid and reliable by having the right assessors assess the work. All right, so the last slide here, I think, options to participate. Yes, absolutely. You can apply to be on the design team. We will work with you over a 2-year period, bring you together. This is voluntary work. We hope to meet with this design team every month for the first 6 months in a typically 6-hour online Zoom meeting. Typically, it goes into a second day, day and a half kind of meeting but we've learned a lot about doing our work together online. And then we would ask you to participate in the pilot study that would be coming along after that, and then potentially participate with us in the field test study coming after that. And so with that, Phyllis, I think unless there's any questions you'd like me to address now, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Amy. Not to put anybody on the spot, but I've seen a lot of questions go by in the chat, and I know that it can be somewhat frustrating if you put a question in the chat and you don't see an immediate answer. So we will have, it looks like, some time at the conclusion of the presentation. If I might ask Terry if she sees any questions perhaps that were not answered or that could benefit from an answer to the larger group, we'd like to be able to do that. In addition, we will commit to you that any questions that need a longer answer that we don't get to today, we will do for this webinar what we did for webinar 2, and we will post a Q&A document so that all of you can benefit from more well-developed answers to the questions that you've raised. There are some very interesting questions that have been presented in the chat. So this concludes the presentation part of webinar 3, putting the pieces together. The next webinar will be about Pilot 4, the program quality peer review process. Please note, and I've seen questions in the chat about this, this process has not yet been designed. We, at this point, cannot answer questions about how many times there would be a review or what it would consist of. We appreciate your patience in that, and we will also be inviting you to a design team application process for that particular activity, but that's all a preview of coming attractions in Pilot 4. So if we go to our next slide, we're coming back full circle now to the Learning to Teach Continuum, which was the impetus for where we started. We have taken you through a number of these topics today, and the component that is now highlighted in green at the bottom will be the focus of the next ECE webinar and the next ECE pilot. So to review again how to enroll in the pilots, we invite you to review the information that is in the pilot guidelines document. This document is available on the ECE webpage, and there is a link right there to the webpage. We invite you to complete and submit the online ECE pilots application form that we've all mentioned, and this too is available through the ECE webpage as well as through this link. And then we invite you to complete and submit the additional documentation that we outlined to you during this webinar according to the time frame indicated in the guidelines document. You will have between 30 to 60 to 90 days, depending on what documentation we're asking for, to submit some additional documentation. And several programs have already submitted the first of those documentations who have currently submitted their application for the pilots. And we thank you for that early response. So now we come to the end, the questions and answers. We've given you the mailing list. Again, if you know colleagues who have not yet signed up for the ECE news updates, please encourage them to sign up. We encourage you to visit the ECE webpage frequently. We are posting new information there always as it becomes available. You can get the slides from all the four now, presentations available. You can get a link to the video because we have videoed all of these and we post them on the Commission's YouTube channel. And we will be sending out several new news updates in the coming weeks. So we do encourage you to make sure that you are signed up and your colleagues who are interested also sign up. So now I'm going to put Terry on the spot here. I did not previously forewarn her I was going to do this, so we appreciate her effort.
I'm ready for this. So a number of things. There's been a number of questions, and I kind of stepped forward and put some information already in the chat that we understand that this change does need some conversation at the system level, at the CSU, the UC, the private institutions, as well as at the community college institution level. We are very much committed to that. One of the reasons Phyllis Jacobson's work is now focusing almost entirely on ECE is to give her the time to be able to do that. Community college level, we definitely need to talk with the Chancellor's office, and we need to talk with the Academic Senate, and we need to apprise everyone about this possible change that's coming forward of an actual commission-approved program for the early childhood workforce. That is on our list of things to do. There have also been a number of questions about timing and how doing pilots 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 at the same time is not going to be really doable. And one of the reasons is if you start this year now in the pilot and work on pilots 1 and 2, the coursework, the TPEs, that will have you in better shape next year when the TPA is ready to be piloted. The TPA design team that is convened will only be about 20 educators, people who teach early childhood education, as well as actual practitioners. If there's some amazing early childhood teacher out there, they can also apply for the design team. And the commission does support educators by paying for a substitute. The design team application process will be posted on the early childhood education webpage as soon as it's been developed, late November or early in December. That group of 20 people will work with Amy Rising and her team to develop the initial instruments for piloting in fall of 21. The peer program quality review process, Pilot 4, will be working with Phyllis and other staff in the Professional Services Division, and a group of about 20 people will help design what should that look like, and it will be ready to be piloted probably in fall of 21. So we're not actually saying you have to get going, all of you, on pilots 3 and 4 in the next month or two. It's really that pilots 1 and 2, looking at your curriculum, making sure it's aligned to the TPEs, and making sure that you have a programness to it. There have also been comments about support staff and how in the teacher preparation world, like at the CSU or the UC, there are staff involved to help with some of the requirements for accreditation. And that's a really good point. And that's one of the reasons that we need to talk with the heads at UC, CSU, the private institutions, as well as the community colleges. And that is definitely on our list. Phyllis, Amy, Mary, are you seeing questions you would like to address?
I've seen a couple of them. One of them was whether there was a connection with between our competencies and dual language learners. And I want to assure everyone, if you take a look at what the TPEs are identifying as competencies, there is considerable information there about working with young dual language learners and viewing that as a very positive asset-based experience. We have listened very carefully to all of the experts in that field and have made sure that our approach to this is consistent with current research and practice. So you will find that in the TPEs. There were a number of questions about perhaps negative consequences for candidates whose programs are not participating in the pilot, that they might in the future not be able to have their coursework accepted when they apply for a permit. And again, we want to reassure you that there is no negative impact for candidates, whether or not your programs are participating in the pilots. We do want to reassure you on that point. There seemed to be quite a bit of nervousness about consequences for candidates. And we are not expecting or planning for any of those negative consequences that people are envisioning.
Phyllis, can I just add a thought there to that question? While there are no consequences directly for your candidates, of course, a pilot study is a study, the more of you that can participate, the more you would learn, and then moving forward in time, the more comfortable you might feel with then taking on this local administration. For example, if I were just to talk about the performance assessment. So really, I think we would all agree or reassure you that involvement is just to your advantage and therefore to your candidate's advantage.
And that's exactly the statement I wanted to make, is that I talked about the slides of what's not changing right now, but what might change in the future. If it does change in the future that the child development permit becomes a document that is earned based on completion of a commission-approved teacher preparation program for early childhood educators, your institution will then need to be making that transition. So that's why the pilots are being offered to support you for that transition that many of us are hoping is coming, because we think it will result in a higher quality, more effective workforce for our youngest children in California.
Thank you very much, both of you, for that clarification. I think in my enthusiasm, I let myself get carried away sometimes. But sorry, go ahead, Terry.
I was going to say, Amy, did you want to talk about bias? Because you've got some.
Yeah, I'm just typing a response, but yes, I do want to talk about that.
Give it orally, because
okay. Well, it's a really important question, Liz. So thank you so much for asking it. Currently, and moving through the years, we have always attended to bias very explicitly in our assessor training, and particularly in the last 6 months. We have really, as we brought our assessors back online to recalibrate them for this fall and in through the winter and spring months, we have instituted a full implicit bias component that has really extended the training and recalibration process, making sure that we are really doubling down on attending to issues related to implicit bias around assessment work. So as we move forward in this work as well, this will be a very important component so that we can all together have a sense that these assessments for our candidates in early childhood are in fact valid and reliable, and that any assessor judgments being made are as free as possible from any bias that would change or shape a performance score decision. So yes, we do attend to it very seriously, and we have actually extended our training around this, and will be requiring it of all performance assessment assessors across all of our current performance assessments. And then certainly in this work, we would be paying very close attention to this issue as well. So thank you for asking that question.
Thank you, Amy. I'd like to share some information with the group that we've learned from the CAP project director, June Milovich. She was kind enough to share with us that the CAP project sent out an outreach email yesterday reminding colleges about the revised outlines that are aligned to the TPEs for the CAP courses, and about CAP's availability to support colleges who are interested in updating their content accordingly. The revised outlines are available on the CAP website, and if you have any questions as to whether your institution is using the CAP aligned, the TPE aligned CAP curriculum, I'm sure that the CAP project would be happy to assist you with that. I did see a couple of questions in the chat with folks not sure which curriculum they were using. So we thank CAP for reaching out and offering that support. Anything else that's people would like to ask that we haven't
Phyllis,
answered?
Something I've seen a number of times that I answered in the chat, but I want to confirm with you, were questions of, well, what's the deadline to apply to participate this year? And I already had mentioned in the chat that you can participate in the pilot in the 2021 year, or you can also participate in the 21-22 year. And we wouldn't need to know about the 21-22 participants probably until summer of 21. But how soon do we want to know about the 2021 participants? Do you have a tentative deadline of when you would like those applications in? Are you thinking like 1st of February, or what are you thinking?
Yes, you know, our grant funding runs by calendar year. And so for us, that year would start in January of 22?
21.
Yes, 21. The sooner that you can apply, the better. The pilot is ongoing during that time frame. It doesn't suddenly stop at the end of year 1 and start again at the end of year 2. We understand that coursework occurs all year round. And so you have an opportunity to join at the point at which you are ready to join. We would, however, for the sake of knowing who's in the pilot for the year 22 year, because our funding does end in June of 22, we would like to have those applications by at the latest February 1 of 22, if you're only participating in the calendar year of 22.
But February of 21, would that be a good tentative deadline for participation in the 2021 year?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was talking about the 22 year. Yes, for for this year, that is the calendar year of 21-22, please have your applications in by February. And again, if you're in process at that point, and I think Terry pointed that out in some of the answers in the chat, if you're in process of moving towards TPE aligned curriculum, that's okay. You can still apply to participate. If you are in process of NAEYC accreditation, you may indicate that on the application form. We've allowed for that possibility. You too may apply and participate in the project and the pilots. You do not need to wait until that activity has been completed in order to participate.
And Phyllis, I also brought June in as
great.
a panelist, if she would like to share a little bit of information maybe.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I just wanted to remind everybody that, so if you have been currently aligned with CAP curriculum, you are very close already to the process. So it's not, there were not huge significant changes, but more detail to some of the outlines, and in 3 specific areas: dual language learners, infant toddler, and the role of teachers in supervising others in the classroom, which traditionally in the curriculum alignment content has been more addressed in the expansion courses, the administration and supervision courses. So bringing pieces of that in at the teacher level where that is actually one of their responsibilities. So those revised outlines are available. I think Terry put the link in, or she can, on the CAP website. And we are happy to help take a look. Where are you? How much revision do you need? We can be very supportive in that, as well as to talking to your curriculum chairs, people on your campuses. That's traditionally been our role. For those of you concerned with maybe, your college is not, considering changes right now. These are things that you could get started on and maybe address in your next scheduled cycle of curriculum review, as long as you kind of had the pieces in the works. So we are happy to help and answer any questions from all to and for your colleges.
Phyllis, could I ask a question? Would it be accurate to say that you would be holding some additional webinars with the piloting institutions where you bring people together to talk about things that are going well and things that are being more challenging? And so that's one of the options, that's one of the benefits you get by participating in the pilot. You're not expected to have everything articulated and already aligned. Being in the pilot is supporting you as you take those steps. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yes, thank you very much, Terry. We haven't yet shared our support plan for those who are in the pilots yet. We've been trying to take this step by step because we know that we're providing an awful lot of new information to the field in a concerted period of time. So yes, there will be a support plan in place. We will be having what we call office hours, so to speak, where programs will have a dedicated time that they can contact somebody about this. We're going to have some additional staff helping out with this work. We will have a series of contact points. What that will look like at this point, we're still deciding, but it would likely include some technology facilitated meetings and other ways to support you. I had a question yesterday in an email not related to the webinar. I had a question about, well, can the commission help us figure out where our curriculum is or how we can align our programs to the guidelines and so on? And absolutely yes, technical assistance is a service that the commission can provide to programs that are interested in moving forward in the pilot, and we can help to organize institutions or programs in a similar sort of phase or situation to form support networks for ourselves.
Right, and I would just add around to the support piece of this, and again, I'm speaking specifically to the performance assessment, pilot study and potential field study and support ongoing around this, is that we do offer lots of support. We offer Again, weekly office hours for you to call us because we know questions come up every week and you need access to someone that can support you. We offer monthly webinars and other types of outreach to our participants that come along and are engaged in performance assessments. And this is an ongoing thing. It's not like we just support you at the startup and then leave you alone. We will be there with you through the entire process. So just wanted to let you know that we're discovering lots of ways with our programs currently for us to offer support that's needed, along with our technical contractor on anything related to the technology aspects of the pilot. But then remember, we're moving towards local administration and local scoring. And so, yes, somebody asked a question, will there be a training of trainers model, some kind of assessor training process that is developed? Answer is yes, we will be developing that and sharing it and then helping everyone locally develop that capacity to do local assessment and scoring and to do it in a very valid and reliable way with a real focus on making sure that implicit bias or any kind of bias isn't coming into that process. So lots of support for you in that pilot and in the other pilots, as these are all combined, right? Because your program will need to be supporting your candidates and the assessment will be embedded in programs. So at the beginning, this may seem like separate pieces of work, but really they're all very interwoven. And Phyllis and myself and our team, Terry, we will all be here to support you.
And if I might ask June to share again a response that I just saw her put into the chat, because there were some questions from the four-year institutions about whether articulation agreements that currently exist would need to be renegotiated because of the TPE aligned curriculum. June, would you mind sharing that again?
Well, I was just saying that the changes that we made were not so significant that they changed the essential element, that's the essential trajectory of the course. And so we stayed within, so the courses still align with CID descriptors, and they were not so significant. We worked with two articulation officers as well to ensure that we weren't causing some huge domino effect. We are adding more detail. We are being more explicit about where the elements of the TPE are covered, but not to the extent where they would require additional articulation agreements or revisions to articulation agreements made.
Thank you, June. That is super helpful to our group who were quite evidently concerned, because this is a major issue for them and the coursework moving in a slightly modified direction.
Right.
I don't see any other burning questions that we didn't respond in some way, but if we have missed anything, please know that we are going to be going back through the chat to make sure that we haven't missed some essential question that needs to be answered. And if we do need to put together a Q&A document based on the chat, we will certainly do that and publish it on our ECE website.
I saw one question of how soon after the application is submitted should they expect to hear from you, Phyllis? And what I wanted to share right now is Phyllis has been extremely busy pulling together these webinars and doing a lot of the other work. So she is going to get back to you, I promise. We also are in the process. We have an application out. Actually, it just closed yesterday. We're trying to hire another consultant in the ECE world that would be able to work with Phyllis. So if she hasn't gotten back to you yet, she will. And remember, the pilot for the TPEs is to support you in aligning your curriculum. You don't have to have that alignment all completely done. You have to be in the process of doing that alignment to be able to participate in pilot number 1.
Thank you, Terry. I appreciate that. And yes, my usual policy is to get back to people, if not the same day, then within 24 hours. That's what I strive for. I was a little bit busy trying to get this webinar put together and making sure that all of our presenters had what they needed. So I do apologize for that, but I will be getting back to anyone who submits for the pilot as quickly as I can. Well, seeing no further burning questions or issues, we're ending a little bit early today, but I do want to thank.
So I was going to say, Phyllis, make sure that remind one more time that signing up for that ECE listserv is really essential. So if you are in this webinar today and are not signed up for that ECE listserv, please sign up for that, because that is how you're going to make sure you get information. And I've just, for the final time, I've put the link to the ECE webpage, which has all of this information. It has links to all of the webinar recordings, the slides for all the webinars, and in the slides, the links are live, so you can use those links. And I'm now done talking, Phyllis.
Oh. Thank you, Terry. And also on the ECE webpage, we have the guidance document for the pilots, and we have links to the master plan committee and any other of the ECE work that we've mentioned that you may also be interested in.
And I believe, Phyllis, there's a mailbox for questions, because if any of you are like me, it's not till the webinar is over that I have my best questions I want to ask. So I want you to know that we are available to you, and Phyllis is going to tell you how to get to that mailbox.
Yes, and Terry, would you be kind enough to type that in? It's the address is ece@ctc.ca.gov. It's a fairly simple email address. You can always send
that mailbox. Every week we will get back to you right away.
I look at that mailbox every single day, and I respond virtually immediately to those emails as well.
Right.
Right. Thank you all.
There was only
much.
one
Yes,
other
more.
question. If
One
we
more.
have a minute, all of a sudden it just dawned on me. There were some questions I saw threaded throughout that were in relation to COVID and some of the issues that all of us as educators are navigating and trying to provide flexibility around. And I just wanted to point out to those of you that have some concerns about that. We, of course, as commission, monitor this very carefully. We want to keep all of our children, all of our students, all of our educators very safe during this pandemic. And so we will always be flexible and have lots and lots of conversations with you about how to engage in this work during this time. So please rest assured that we are highly aware of how educators are grappling with COVID, and we are very supportive as a commission around establishing flexibilities and strategies so that we can support those who are eager to come into our great profession so that no one is left out just because of the pandemic. So do rest assured that we know lots of strategies, and we'll be sharing that as we go along through the next couple of years here.
Thank you very much, Amy, for adding that super important piece of information. All right, anyone else? All right, June.
I see some questions in the chat about the curriculum alignment project, like where to find things and things. So I did post a link of CDTC CAP page. I will in the chat already. And I'm wondering, Phyllis, if just to, because CAP has a mailing list, but I'm wondering if through the ECE mailing list that you have, the invitees to this performance, could we send out that same information?
Certainly, and what I would also appreciate, June, is if you could provide us with the specific website or mailing address, whatever, that we can put also on our ECE webpage to link to the CAP project as well. That might be very helpful for participants.
Absolutely. So that for anybody who's asking questions in the chat right now, that will be the place to look.
Okay. One last chance.
We have a few more minutes, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you again, everyone. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time when we'll be talking about the peer program quality review process and its development and future implementation in Pilot 4. That webinar will be in 2 weeks. If you're on our ECE news updates, you can expect to have an update this coming week with new information about that and other matters as well. And thank you all very much. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye, everybody.